Welcome back to Our Own Devices. And this time, again, a special guest for you all the way from the West Coast in the US. We have Rick Bergman, who is the Executive Vice President of Computing and Graphics at AMD. So, AMD, in the past few years at least, has really gone ahead of the peloton, as they call it in cycling terms, when it comes to almost everything in computing, and from a company that earlier, at least for some people like me, used to be more of an enthusiast chip or something that a lot of the gamers were looking at very seriously. This is now the go-to recommendation when it comes to what you need to buy or what you need to look for inside your computer when you are buying a new PC or a laptop. So, Mr. Bergman, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm real excited to be here today.
So, let me ask you the big question of the past 2 years. How has pandemic affected the computing business? Has it been good, bad? And you know like all computing industries, even the chip makers have had a great year, be it the silver lining in the dark cloud.
No, I think that's a great question. And as we're working through this, to me, it's accelerated some technology trends that were likely going to happen anyways. But actually, just me and you talking on video or audio wasn't a common mode of communication previously. A lot of times it would be at least for me, it'd be a cell phone type of phone call. But now I use video 8, 10 hours a day, and it's just become this incredibly important medium. And what that has helped drive is this resurgence in the interest in the PC market. Because suddenly people want a very high performance, either notebook or desktop computer, because they're using it on such a large amount of the day. And quality is so important. And that just plays right into the strengths of AMD. We have tremendous processing power and we have tremendous graphics power, great video capabilities, and so on. And as that has emerged, AMD is just one of the best positioned companies to take advantage of this reemergence of technology.
As a company, AMD was, if I can say, a sweet spot, at a sweet spot just before the pandemic sort of, started impacting our lives, and it's been a steady path to growth. It's not something that's happened overnight. Can you just explain what you did right with Ryzen and that entire suite of devices and processors that you have released over the past 2 3 years?
So just for background, I've been at AMD for a little over 2 years now, and
Oh,
so
okay.
some of the great thinking happened before I arrived because whether it's GPUs, CPUs, or server processors, it's just not something that occurs in 1 to 2 years. It actually takes vision and foresight. So Lisa and the executive team 5 years ago kind of put this together about how we execute around a roadmap. We moved to this idea of having chiplets well before the industry, and then just maintaining that steady cadence again on our server, client, and our GPUs. And we started to see the fruits of that a couple of years ago with Ryzen, where we kind of, in essence, caught up, and now have just taken a lead in the marketplace of having the best CPUs. Same thing with Epic, and now the same thing is starting to happen with our GPUs as well. But it's really a culture of execution and focus around high performance computing and graphics.
Also, in a market like India, something that's always endeared AMD to users is the fact that the pricing is actually a little bit better than the competition. It's always more accessible, to the very price sensitive Indian customer. Is that something you think has also become a big advantage now?
Well, at AMD, we don't want to be known as the price leader, clearly. It may be, again, on my background, I used to be at AMD then 10 years ago, kind of my first time around. And that was part of our key value proposition. Today, we really want kind of the industry to think about us as having the best technology and bringing the best solutions to marketplace. We're going to be competitive on pricing. There's no doubt about it. But what I think we bring to the table in terms of innovation and new technology and new user experiences. To me, that's what the core buying public should be thinking about and talking about. How different tasks, how our video will start playing better, how our games run faster at frame rates that's acceptable. Those type of things is what AMD is becoming known for. And we want to continue to have AMD as in the forefront as being the technology leader.
So is that user experience requirement from the end users, has it changed drastically over the past couple of years? Are you thinking differently now on what maybe an entry level laptop needs to offer compared to what it was offering maybe a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of focus on the gaming laptop because I think that's the best example of what I'm talking about. So we back in early June we announced what's called the Advantage program, and it really is it's a design framework ultimately geared for end users so that if they want to buy a gaming notebook, they know they can look for the AMD Advantage program, and it's going to be one heck of a notebook. And for various price points, we're going to make sure there's the right CPU, the right GPU for gaming, the right display technology, whether it's refresh rate, the luminance of the screen, memory type, thickness, battery life, all those different things we're putting in this framework together. So the end user doesn't have to kind of go through because it could be you look at 8 different vendors, looking at all those different specs, trying to figure out well what's the best gaming notebook for me, and we're trying to solve that problem. So actually the simple answer is go look for Advantage notebooks and pick the your favorite one from your favorite vendor. But boy, it's you're going to get a really state of the art notebook. And so we've had great support from ASUS, MSI, HP, and Lenovo on that front, and you'll continue to see those type of solutions come forward. And so when I talk about end user experience, that's the type of thing that I'm referring to. And we'll continue to look at commercial notebooks and workstations and other things moving forward to make sure, again, we offer that best end user experience.
So, if I can flip that question and based on your answer, using or looking for a good AMD gaming laptop is pretty much the reference design for an average consumer now, right? Like, and especially given the work from home scenario, that's what you're looking for.
Well, you'd want to look for the AMD Advantage specifically.
Yeah.
In there, it has gone through kind of a certification process with AMD, and that will solve the gaming notebook solution that you want to work for. And yes, it'll be a great home notebook, absolutely.
So, is AMD's focus primarily on gaming, or is it just a part of the booking?
No, it's just part. I don't want to be totally focused on gaming. It's an area where I have passion because it involves both the CPU and a GPU from AMD. But clearly, like the commercial space is another example where AMD is just growing by leaps and bounds because again we have the best processor solution. We've looked at all the other pieces around the processor to make sure that we can offer a great solution around our Ryzen Pro, for example, is the brand for commercial notebooks also.
It's also an interesting time in the chip segment because you have Apple, which is working on its M1 and future processors. You also have other companies which are looking at their own chipsets. So, is that a threat to the AMD model of business?
Well, clearly companies like Apple and others are able to design chips, and they do a fine job of it. And in some ways, competition makes us better. As we do look at alternative solutions, obviously they're not a head-to-head type of competitor, but it kind of makes us continue to lift the bar as well. And I think that is it a threat to us indirectly. We have to view it as competition, but ultimately, again, what we're looking at is how do we move the state of the art for our customers. And when we look 3 or 4 years out, which is what we do today, we look at how much are we increasing performance, what new features are we bringing, how are we extending battery life, uh, what frame rates can we achieve, what resolutions, all those different things. We keep an eye on competition, but these days more it's uh, in the semiconductor world, how can we continue to just, as I said, continuously to raise that bar year over year? Because ultimately, what we want to do is excite and thrill end users and have them look for AMD based solution.
So, a bit late, it might be a bit late in the day, but Intel has announced a new architecture roadmap, and it is pretty much the elephant in the room when it comes to any conversation about processors. So, how do you look at competition in this space? Because it was all about Intel for a long time, and now suddenly you guys have gone ahead.
No, and certainly we don't have majority share yet, so we have a lot of work to do, and there's other players in the marketplace. So we definitely keep our eye on them.
At least from a technology perspective, you are ahead.
Oh yeah, from a technology perspective, but we also want to grow from a market share and a revenue perspective and so on. So yes, we do have competition in the processor space. They've been generating a lot of headlines the last few weeks, especially with various announcements. So, but ultimately, as I said, what we're focused on is what we're doing, and not so much what they're doing. Because again, we think we have the technology lead, and so more and more, and this is true on CPUs and GPUs. We're looking at, well, what did we do with Zen 3, and where do we have to go with Zen 4 and with Zen 5 to make sure we're raising the bar against ourselves. And likewise, we have on the graphic side, we have the RDNA architecture. And so more and more, when we do an announcement, we don't talk how we compare to our competition. We talk about, well, how did we compare to what we did a year ago, and kind of what new experiences are we unlocking with our new architectures. And so it's, as I say, competition makes us all better, and that's good for consumers out there. Keeps us on our toes. But boy, with the culture that's been put in place at AMD, boy, we are driving down a very aggressive roadmap to continue to increase performance.
So, with so much of impact coming from the pandemic, and again, you have this huge demand spike, it's also happening at a time when you are constrained when it comes to the supply side. So, how is a company like AMD looking at that? Are you working on ways to sort of mitigate this problem? Has it really hit you guys yet?
No, it's clearly we're constrained on most of our product lines in terms of supply. I mean, we've like in our compute and graphics, we've grown 65% year over year. That's We're not a small company anymore. So we're north of $4 billion a quarter, ballpark. And so you're growing at that rate. We're just consuming so much more from our supply chain. So it's almost independent of the pandemic. It's a big challenge, and our operations team has done a fantastic job allowing us to have that growth rate. It's something we'll continue to work through, and we're doing that. Each quarter is getting a little better than the prior quarter, and as we look out, next year and in the following years, we've announced a few supply agreements out there to really assure that growth can continue going forward. And at some point, there will be some leveling out of the demand. Certainly, this big surge that happened around compute, some of it was fueled by the pandemic, but a lot of it is again, as we started our discussion, was fueled by people appreciating their PC or their notebooks a lot more. And it's if you look at I'm kind of an extreme in the family level, but each of my family members has multiple PCs themselves. But I think the model more and more is everybody in the family has to have their own personal computer, which is distinctly different than the thoughts a couple of years ago. And so it's great to me to see the notebook reemerge as the primary computing platform. When kind of a couple of years ago it was, it's all heading towards the cell phone. But now it's how do we use these devices together?
Entire work from home scenario, which we think is going to last maybe a couple of years, is that also changing how you would maybe look at designs, or what you would want to put into the capabilities of a processor for the coming years? Is that changing your thinking at that level?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I personally don't think it's a couple of year phenomena.
Mhm.
So I'm calling you from home today.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
I have a beautiful office, but it's Monday morning, and I know traffic here in Silicon Valley is a little worse on Monday mornings. So I'll wait a few hours, and then I'll shoot into the office. And I think that'll be the attitude going forward, because there's just so much congestion and so on, and it's actually more effective. I'm not wasting 30 or 45 minutes sitting in a car. And once you come to that conclusion, then my office environment and home environment have to be very similar. And so for us, for example, video conferencing, Teams, Zoom, we're putting in a lot of capabilities to make sure that we're able to elevate that experience. So it's the best experience possible, both plugged into the wall and also on battery. So that's absolutely impacting as the way we look at products going forward.
So, how big is India as a market for you? And I'm sure India has also seen this amazing growth in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I don't have an exact figure on what percentage India is. I will tell you, we pay a lot of attention to India because we see it with its young workforce and the potential, the size of the investment we're making in India. We're over a couple thousand employees, and I will tell you it's a big investment area. We expect to grow India probably faster than any other region in the world at this juncture, again, across all of our different product lines. So we'll continue to focus on India, both as a, of course, consuming as well as a key and employee base going forward. And I look forward to visiting India again. Unfortunately, since I rejoined AMD a couple of years ago, I had some trips planned, and then the pandemic got in the way. So, but I hope to get there maybe in 2022 if things get better.
So one last thing, if I can ask you, at a philosophical level, as somebody who comes in with different types of experience over the past 30 years, is there a different outlook that you have post the pandemic on how the entire, technology sphere itself is going to shape up? Is it different from what you maybe thought of in a couple of years back? Do you think it's taken a detour?
As we've talked during this discussion, I think what has really happened is it's actually accelerated our innovation, which I know kind of sounds crazy because it feels like we work so hard to do incredible things. But it's really gotten us to look at our product line and say, how can we actually do better? How can we get there faster with the technology that's in front of us? And as I said, when you start to think about, well, everybody's going to want to own a notebook or PC, it does change your thinking. Uh, Whether it's a gaming or a commercial type of notebook, it's okay. A lot of times we've thought how to do things more economically, back to your point, from a value perspective. Now I'd say our first priority is technology. To me, that's a fundamental change from a couple of years ago. Is we have got to continue to make this experience better. People are going to pay for it. They're excited about getting new notebooks. Really, to me, it's almost from like 15 years ago, where each year brought new innovation into the notebook. I think we're in one of those cycles now, where every year you're going to see just incredible innovation in the notebooks marketplace, as an example, as well as the desktop in the gaming area. So to me, it's a really exciting time in the PC marketplace.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman, and that was a very insightful conversation. Thanks for being on the show.
All right. Well, no, it's the beginning of my week, so it's a great way to start off the week. And thank you for having me on the show. I enjoyed our discussion.
This is Nandagopal Rajan signing off our own devices. We'll be back again next week with another guest. Thank you.